What is up, my beautiful brainy babes, and welcome back to another episode of Sex as a Biological Variable, where we dive into both the science and the soul of being female. I'm Dr. Rosie Ray, and even after earning my PhD in biomedical science, there's still so much that I wasn't taught about my own body and brain. So that's what we're doing here, learning from the scientific literature and the lived experience of women to talk about what's really going on. So let's dive in.
Hi, so formal. Hi, Rosie.
Okay, so where are we today?
We're in Charleston, South Carolina.
Yes,
You came to visit for the weekend.
It's the 4th of July.
4th of July weekend.
Happy birthday, America.
America 250.
And yeah, so in Charleston, so I used to live here about a year ago. I was here finishing up my PhD at MUSC, and me and Shelby
girl.
Me and Shelby met here at a mocktails and manifestation. Totally random. But we were sitting next to each other and we just kind of hit it off and exchanged numbers. And what happened? Shelby loves telling this story.
I love telling this story because we were sitting next to each other at this mocktails manifestation event, kind of like a women's event. And Rosie and I exchanged numbers, and I was like, I didn't know anybody in Charleston at this point. I think I knew like one person, and then like my coworkers. And we exchanged numbers, and I texted her, and she didn't text me for 2 or 3 months after that. And I was like, oh man, I thought I made a friend, but she ghosted me.
I was going through so much at that time.
But then she texted me in July, and she was like, hey girl, want to go do yoga? And I was like, yeah.
Dude, shout out to Bob and Kelly. What was their studio?
Still Soul studio?
Yeah, here in Charleston. And they did beach yoga on Sullivan's Island every Tuesday and Thursday for free, meditation and yoga. We were going every Tuesday and Thursday.
Yeah.
Most beautiful sunsets, just like so relaxing.
So relaxing.
So rejuvenating.
I remember I would like come back from work and I would be just like looking forward to like having the yoga. And Bob would do would he do the meditation part or would he do the yoga part?
He did the yoga and Kelly did the meditation.
He would do the yoga part, but he would say, you guys had a stressful day at work. He said, get off the highway onto the exit. And like that's like a phrase that has stuck with me. Get off the highway, you're onto the exit now.
Yeah.
And help me just really calm down after a stressful day at work.
Yeah. And then we would go and then we would just hang out on the beach after, me and you just talking.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, good times.
Yeah, such a good time. But today, for this episode, we're going to be talking about, I guess I am really interested in talking about ADHD and autism, sex differences in development, because Shelby is a school psychologist. Shelby, can you tell us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So I'm a school psychologist. I have my master's in school psychology. And I moved to South Carolina 4 years ago and have been working as a school psychologist ever since. And then I got my private practice license 2 years ago in 2024, because in the school setting, you can't diagnose. You can only evaluate a child and look to see if they qualify for special education services. So with my private practice license, I'm able to diagnose like autism, ADHD. I do a lot of learning disabilities like dyslexia and things like that. So I love it because it's like the best of both worlds type of thing, but it's definitely interesting, the private practice for sure.
Yeah. Why is it interesting?
The school setting, in contrast, sometimes I'll more so get parents that we think there's a disability there, but maybe parents don't want to accept it or aren't ready to hear that, because I work at an elementary school. So a lot of times it's like the first time the parent is hearing that their child is struggling or, may need extra support. And with the private practice, it's interesting because we have parents and clients come in and they are seeking a diagnosis. And I feel like I get more, both of my jobs are rewarding, but I feel like the private practice is rewarding in the sense of I'm able to help the parent get that answer and they want to know, okay, what's next? What can we do? So Really, like with autism specifically, we have clients that are like 2 years old, 3 years old, 4 years old. And what's key for autism is early intervention. And so that has shown to have the greatest outcomes with kids with autism is intervening early, because a lot of children with autism have speech delays early on. They might have speech and then have a regression in their speech. So really like getting that speech therapy early, but providing a diagnosis can help the family access therapies more readily.
When would you say any type of autism symptoms can first be observed in a child? Because you say like earliest is best so that they can get the resources that they need. And so like when can a parent realize like, oh, like maybe there's something being delayed here versus just normal development?
Yeah, so a lot of times parents will, so we kind of go through a developmental questionnaire with them, and we ask them, what age did you first have concerns? A lot of times parents will say around 12 months, so around a year.
Yeah.
And I ask them, what were your concerns at that time? A lot of, with autism specifically, what we'll see or what I'll ask is, how did your baby respond to, like, if you went up to him and tried to make him smile, would he give a social smile in response? Another thing we look at is like some parents say, we thought that they didn't pass their hearing test because they weren't responding when we called their name. Like not responding to their name, social smiling, responding to social smiles. And then another one, if there was a regression in their speech, or around 12 months, like were they saying their first words? A lot of times we'll see a speech delay. I ask about age of first words and age of first phrases, because there is a developmental window, right? So we don't want parents to panic if their child might be behind in that developmental window comparatively. But there is a certain sense of, okay, are we past the developmental window for speech? And okay, do we need to intervene now? So a lot of parents will ask, kind of what age were they first concerned? What did they notice at that time? And we'll kind of go from there. And I'll ask kind of more questions about their early development, toddlerhood, and things like that.
Okay. So then getting into the sex differences of it, because autism is a lot more prevalent in boys, at least that's what I was reading in the literature. It's like around 4 times more prevalent. And so what is going on with that?
Yes. Okay. I'm going to preface this by saying I don't know any of the specific data or statistics. I'm going to go off of like my experience and what I see in the private practice. In the private practice, I will see more boys come in around toddler age, around 2, 3, 4, for autism evaluations. I would say maybe it's like 65% boys to maybe like 35% girls. And what I notice specifically is that I'll get actually a lot of autism referrals for females that are older, maybe 7, age 9, age 13 I've had. But stereotypically, boys struggle more with the social aspect, the social communicate with autism. One of the qualifying criteria is there is a social communication deficit. So they struggle with interpreting social cues. They might struggle with a social overture, like how we get somebody's attention. Do they respond to greetings? Do they smile? Do they vocalize in response? Do they gesture? Do they wave? So a lot of times with girls, they're able to what's called masking. They're able to mask and kind of pick up some of those social cues. I don't know what specifically in the brain causes that with females.
When you say masking, like what does that mean? Because I think when I hear masking, I think like, oh, I want to behave in one way, but I'm going to behave in this other way, and like kind of put this mask on that's societally acceptable.
Yes. So with masking, especially in girls, it's almost like they can pick up what is expected in a social situation and mirror that, whether that's facial expressions, whether that's, okay, I know that I have to smile and wave in response right now for that other person to be acknowledged. And I'm broadly generalizing females. A lot of females are able to mask, especially maybe at those early ages. So sometimes we get those older female clients where they might not be exhibiting those social communication deficits early on, but maybe they have some restricted interests, or maybe they have some sensory differences at those ages.
Okay.
So there might have been some signs, but maybe their pediatrician wanted to wait and see how they would develop, or their pediatrician might say, you know, we think they're on track or typical. And then a lot of times in early elementary school, a lot of females might start to have difficulties with relationships with peers. That's a common thing that we start to notice.
And is
then,
that more prevalent in females during that time?
I don't know specifically, but for masking in general, we notice the social communication deficits with friendships. So if you ask a child with autism, like, what does it mean to be a good friend? How do you know someone's your friend?
Yeah. And is that a question that you're asking?
It's a question. Yeah, it's a question
That's
that kind of on our testing that we do.
Yeah.
A lot of children with autism, boys and girls, have what we call like limited insight into relationships. So, for example, I had one client the other day. She was 7. She was so cute. A very bright girl. And at first, when you're doing an evaluation, you're looking at the child, and that first interaction with them, I'm kind of looking to see, like, you know, how do they react to me? And she had great social skills. She engaged in reciprocal conversation. She asked me questions. I asked her questions. It wasn't just that one-sided talking about a specific topic that they're interested in. I had her come in, and at first I was like, okay, wow, she has some pretty good communication skills, or social communication skills. And then when we got into like the nitty gritty, when I'm asking her more so those questions about relationships, she had very limited insight on friendships and things like that. And so I'll give you an example. So I asked her, how do you know that someone's your friend? Or what does it mean to be a good friend? And she said, you know, when someone walks with me in the hallway to my class. So a little bit of like limited insight there.
Yeah. And how old was she?
7.
Okay.
Yeah, so about 2nd grade.
Yeah.
So I'll kind of see that with a lot of females who maybe they'll present as socially higher. And then when you kind of get into the nitty gritty and we're doing some testing and play items, I'll start to notice, okay, here's where the gaps are.
Interesting. And so do you find that like those initial like social communication things that like you were saying, that girls can mask better, do you think that they're masking, or do you think that they just like understand it better and they're able to do that versus the boys that can't?
It's hard to say. And I don't know if it's with our female brain, because females are so socially oriented. Like, for example, even like adult females, we like to share our feelings and talk. And
a lot more empathetic, a lot more understanding. And then I guess something that I was also thinking with that, because don't girls mature like neurologically before boys do?
They say that in the literature.
And also just like talking with girls.
Yes. I know that like they say that around age 26, just across the board, is when your prefrontal cortex develops fully. So that's like your judgment, your decision making, your ability to like, you know, kind of do those higher level skills across the board. I haven't specifically looked into sex differences with that, but that would be an interesting thing.
And I'm sure that people have, but I'm just thinking, because like talking to like a 12-year-old girl versus a 12-year-old boy, I feel like most of the time the 12-year-old girl is a lot more mature, like socially, like, interactive. And so I guess I'm just thinking about that with autism during development.
Yeah, I don't really know. I think that would be a good thing to like look into.
So it seems that autism is presenting differently between boys and girls. Boys having more social deficits when they're younger, whereas girls can kind of mask for that. And then the deficits that they have as far as relationships, that doesn't show up until they're a little bit older.
And that's just a broad generalization. So like it's not every client, it's not every case, but that's typically what I have been seeing in the private practice.
Well, and I guess because autism is like, it's a spectrum disorder, and with every individual being so different and specific, and then like the effect that it's having. Then as far as diagnoses, because if a girl is socially adequate and able to have these relationships, I'm guessing that girls are probably underdiagnosed for autism.
I would agree with that. I don't know the specific like stats on like the literature, but I do feel like that may be a thing where they are underdiagnosed.
Yeah.
Which might be why we're seeing those older clients come in,
Mm-hmm.
especially if a family doesn't know or parents don't know what symptoms are, they might just think, okay, maybe they're engaging in this quirky behavior.
Yeah, maybe they're a little funny.
Or maybe, they like to spin in circles to help regulate themselves.
Yeah.
And a lot of times families just might not know some of the symptoms early on, or maybe their pediatrician maybe overlooked some things.
Yeah.
I think with going into social media, obviously social media, there's that double-edged sword of it can be really good and it can be really bad.
Because these days everyone is diagnosing themselves as autistic,
yes,
ADHD, all
yes.
the things.
If you do think you're on the spectrum or have ADHD, please go get a full evaluation.
See a medical professional.
Please go get a full evaluation if you think you might have a disorder.
So are you only certified to diagnose children, or can you, like, is your certification, like, you could diagnose an adult too?
Technically, I could do adult evals, but because my experiences with children, I kind of specialize with kids.
Yeah. Oh my God, are you just running around like all the time being like, that person has ADHD, that person has dyslexia? Because I feel like I wouldn't be able to turn that off.
No. I think I try to turn it off the best I can. Sometimes like I'll notice like if I see someone and they're maybe a little bit socially awkward.
Yeah.
But also here's the thing. I feel like some people have anxiety or other things that maybe they're not the best at social communication, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they have autism.
Yeah.
So I think that's part of it. I think a lot of our society says, especially with the rise of social media, our society is saying, okay, I'm into this weird interest and I'm not good at talking to people, so I must be autistic. And really, sometimes that's not the case. And I think it's okay to have like these quirky interests, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have autism. So really, for autism, you have to meet certain criteria in the DSM-5, and it has to cause a significant impairment on your daily life. But going back to the social media conversation, I've seen parents where they will think their child is autistic because they might exhibit some symptoms, but it's not enough when we do the full evaluation, it's not really enough to say, okay, yes, they do have autism, or they do meet that diagnostic threshold to meet that criteria.
Yeah.
On the flip side of that, I had a parent come in, I think her child was about 2.5, a boy, and she came in because she noticed that her son had difficulty with eye contact. He had some sensory stuff where he would, we call it stimming, where if you see children like flap their hands when they get really excited, it's almost like a sensory regulation strategy that those kids use.
Where does the term stimming come from? I'm guessing like from some type of stimulation. And so is that just like they're overstimulated and so
it could be that they're overstimulated or understimulated.
And they need stimulation.
Exactly.
Okay.
So I've had kids who need that deep pressure, for example.
Yeah.
Or some kids might need movement. So they might spin around in circles, or when they're watching TV, they might rock back and forth just kind of to regulate, and that's what feels good to them.
Yeah.
But with that parent that came in with the toddler, she had no autism in her family, so she wasn't really exposed to.
Is autism, can that be hereditary?
Yes, it can be.
Okay.
Can
ADHD be hereditary?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'll say with dyslexia, I will see 9 times out of 10, if the parent has dyslexia, the child has dyslexia, or one of the children has dyslexia.
Okay.
That one is very prevalent. Like that one, I'm like, if it's in the family history, I'm looking for it. But with that mom that came in, her son was 2.5, boy. He had some social deficits, but it was also her first child. So sometimes when it's your first child, you don't really know what's typical, what's developmentally normal. They might be a little bit delayed, but maybe they're still in that developmental window for speech. So mom came in and she was like, actually, I saw a TikTok where a mom was talking about the symptoms that her son had and how he ended up getting a diagnosis of autism. So I came in, and that was a heartwarming story because it shows the good side of social media, that there is more awareness now of it and awareness of the symptoms. And I think that a lot of, especially first time parents, that can be good, especially just to say, okay, wait, maybe there
kind
are
of a
some
little
things that
sanity check, and it's
yeah,
like, am I saying this right?
exactly.
Okay,
Like
they're also saying this.
exactly. Like maybe there are some things that I need to like check in on.
Mm-hmm.
So I evaluated her son, and he ended up getting the diagnosis of autism. But it's great because I always tell the families, with a diagnosis, it's not prognosis of like where your life is going to lead.
Yeah, it's not a life sentence.
There are so many people that thrive and they have autism,
Mm-hmm.
and that have great careers and are in society and function in society. I always just tell the parents that it's important that they're coming in early, and so whatever interventions they need, that we can provide those services to them and get them in early.
Yeah. I think getting a diagnosis and then being able to have access to the resources that you need, like that's so important. And because I know one of my good friends in grad school, one of his sons, he did get an autism diagnosis. And I remember him like talking about it, and he's like, this is so good because like now we can get him into these classes, and he's like working with these professionals.
Yes.
And we're getting extra money from the government to like help support that. And so being able to have that diagnosis to like help your kid, how wonderful.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. So we were talking about it a little bit earlier, but what causes autism?
This is the age-old question, highly debated in the research field. What I know of so far is that there are specific genes that have been linked to autism. If your child is on the spectrum, there is an option like to get genetic testing done to see if they have those specific genes. I know that like part of that has been linked to autism. When I was in grad school, we were taught that vaccines do not cause autism. However, there is a preservative that they used to use in vaccines called thimerosal, and that preservative was correlated with autism.
Interesting.
So,
okay, when was that in all vaccines? Like what time period was that? Is that still used in vaccines today?
And see, I don't know that for,
okay.
I don't know
hey,
that
we can look
part.
It up.
We can look that up. But I just remember that like that was a big thing with not the vaccine itself, but the preservatives and the things that they use in the vaccine. You also have kind of the Crunchy Mamas camp talking about like heavy metals and gut dysbiosis.
Gut dysbiosis in the child or in the mom?
In children that have autism. Okay. So you kind of go on the opposite side of the spectrum, where some parents believe that maybe there's heavy metals that are causing the autism like symptoms in the child. And there's also been a push in the autism community for more research around like gut microbiome. And a lot
in
of
the child.
in the children. And I know a lot. I just follow a lot of families that like make pages about like their children with autism, and what they're focusing on is like gut health and maybe going gluten free or taking out red dyes from the child's diet.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because for so many different types of ailments, it's like if you're taking out gluten, taking out red dyes, like eating whole foods, like really trying to like heal your gut and just heal the body, like that's going to benefit you in so many ways.
Yeah.
For like everything.
Yeah. It is also hard too though for children on the spectrum, because with some kids, they have texture, they have food aversions, and they have texture preferences. So a lot of children, they like more crunchy foods rather than like soft foods, or they might have a restricted diet to where they have like 5 safe foods that they eat all the time. So a lot of parents will say like it's really hard for them to get like the nutrients in, so they'll supplement with like multivitamins and things like that. But that's another factor to it. Like if you're trying to change a child's diet and then they only want certain foods, that can be difficult.
Man, so many interesting things.
Yeah.
We could shift it to talking a little bit more about ADHD.
Okay.
Well, so I guess like what do you, between ADHD and autism, what are you diagnosing more?
I would say,
and it could just be a product of like who's coming into the private practice.
I would say I do get a lot of ADHD evaluations, but I would say autism is more prevalent that we're diagnosing right now. I think too, especially with social media, it kind of goes in waves. So about 5 years ago, ADHD was like the big thing.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think my kid has ADHD. I think my kid has it. I think
was
I have
trending.
ADHD. It was like kind of trending. And then now we are seeing more of like that autism pickup. Like, I think I have autism.
Yeah. Okay. And I guess like little backstory on me, because I got diagnosed with ADHD in 2017 when I was in college. And I was having difficulty focusing. There was a lot of things going on. And then this was a while ago too, but I went to the doctor and was like talking to her about it and got diagnosed. They put me on Adderall. I hated it. I absolutely hated it.
Did you have side effects from it?
Yeah, it definitely helped me focus, but like I wasn't eating. It was hard for me to sleep. I was on the extended release, but by the time that it would wear off, the come down was so hard for me. I would get like angry. And it was just like it was such a hard thing. But that time I had been meditating before then, but like when I realized, okay, I really can't be taking this Adderall anymore, that's when I really started meditating like consistently and a lot, and that helped my focus so much. Because my brain, like I still have a hard time focusing. Like there'll be times that we were talking about this the other day, that I'll just be like pinballing around like one thing to the next to the next to the next. And then I will get like hyper focused on something which I have no business doing. Like, and there's other things I need to be working on.
Yes, that happens to me.
Yeah. But so as far as diagnoses between men and women, and I guess like girls and boys, because ADHD is a lot more prevalent in boys, right?
With the sex differences and what I've seen is that boys show a lot more externalizing behaviors. We call it externalizing behaviors.
Yeah, what is that?
That would be any type of behavior that you can see, right? So that you can outwardly see. So that might be impulsivity, hyperactivity, aggression, things like that. Whereas girls present more with that inattention piece. So it might be harder to pick up on. I noticed that when I work in the schools, a lot of teachers actually, they're more quick to point out maybe, and this is with boys and girls, but any child that has like an externalizing behavior.
Yeah.
Rather than,
because that can be disruptive to the class.
Exactly.
Whereas if there's a girl just sitting in class, like not paying attention, that's not messing up the entire class.
Exactly. So it's definitely easier to pick up on those types of behaviors. And then I think sometimes with girls, they can kind of get overlooked in a sense.
Yeah.
Especially if they're being quiet at their seat and maybe they're just daydreaming out the window.
And do you think that that is similar with autism, where girls are just better at masking, where they recognize like, oh, this is like socially what I need to be doing, so like I'm just gonna do that even though like my brain is off doing this other thing?
That might play a part of it. That might play a part of it. I also think maybe that like with the sex differences, that like you were saying with maturity, I don't know this full statistics, but I can speak on my experiences. And what I see in the schools is that like typically girls at early elementary age, they can sit in a desk and sit still, whereas boys typically need more movement. They're more energetic and they're a 5-year-old boy.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things that come into play with that too.
Yeah. And I guess I was also thinking with the diagnoses of autism and probably with ADHD as well and I don't know with younger children, and I don't know with like middle-aged 20, 30, but I know that in older individuals, like I'm thinking about Alzheimer's disease. So women are underdiagnosed for Alzheimer's disease because they cognitively perform better than men in old age. And
interesting.
Yeah, even if the tau proteins and the amyloid beta is building up, they're still cognitively performing better than men. And so they're underdiagnosed. And so I wonder if there's a similar mechanism happening with young girls, is that thinking about that maturity aspect. If their cognition is already higher at a younger age, but because like it's already higher, and if they have these deficits, ADHD, autism, they're not like showing the symptoms in the same way, so they're not getting the diagnosis.
That is so interesting.
Just like, I don't know, just like connecting those dots and that's like 70 years
That
apart.
would be a good thing to research. Your next
Yeah.
research study.
If someone will give me money to do it. But yeah, so I guess I'm just thinking about that, knowing that women in older age are less diagnosed for cognitive deficits because they're already performing higher. So
And if they, and maybe like, are they performing higher cognitively, or are they masking, or are they like,
yeah, because the tests that they've done are on things like working memory and like verbal recall.
Yep.
And I feel like that's not, I don't know if that's something that you would mask necessarily. It's either like you remember it or you don't.
Yeah, because those skills, like working memory and like long-term, we call it long-term retrieval. It's like your long-term memory.
Yeah.
And the way I explain that is, it's like, if you picture a file cabinet, it's how quickly and efficiently you can retrieve a file from your file cabinet. Those skills are typically pretty solid over your lifetime. They don't really change much. You can do little tasks and activities to improve your working memory slightly,
like what?
Or like your recall. If you think about like certain apps and certain games,
Wordle connections.
Yeah, that one. For working,
she says no, actually not that.
For working memory, it's more so you have your auditory working memory and your visual working memory. So the way that we test that as a psychologist, we have there's specific tests that we give, but really for working memory, the research shows that you can hold up to like 6 to 7 things within your working memory at a time. Now, if your working memory is a little bit lower, you can practice and do things like, say, if you said to your friend, okay, remember this: tree, spoon, fork. And you asked them immediately after, repeat what I said. Tree, spoon, fork. And then maybe you could do some activities like that to help with your working memory. With long-term retrieval, you could say, okay, remember cake, fire, spoon, and ask them that 30 minutes later and see if they remember that.
Yeah.
That would be more so like your long-term retrieval.
So with the ADHD, we were talking about how it presents differently in girls and boys. And then what I was reading was that ADHD is more prevalent in boys at younger ages, but in adulthood, it is the same. It's like comparable between males and females.
Interesting.
Yeah. And so I guess like, what do you think about that? Because like me as an adult that got diagnosed with ADHD, and I definitely had symptoms as a child.
Okay, that's what I was going to ask you, because we'll get some adult clients that come in, maybe early 20s, maybe in their 30s. They'll say, I think I have ADHD. And the first thing we go through is their developmental history. Okay, when did you start having symptoms? What did you notice at that time? A lot of adult clients might say, yeah, I'm exhibiting these symptoms, but they won't have those symptoms when we ask about their early childhood and development. For it to be true ADHD diagnosis, it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. So that means that it's present from your childhood and history, and then it continues. Now, you might have maybe somebody who had those symptoms early on, but maybe learned some coping strategies for that. So for example, if it's inattention, you might have someone that learned, okay, I'm going to make a list of everything I have to do and write it down and check it off as I go. Or if I have homework to do, I'm going to use a visual timer and I'm going to focus for 10 minutes. When the timer goes off, I'm going to take a break. So you have some people that maybe have learned some strategies to kind of cope with those executive functioning deficits.
Yeah.
And
which, like, you're saying all of that, and it's like I was always making lists growing up. As far as like my schoolwork, I was very like, okay, like I'm gonna sit down and do this, but I would set a timer to do that. But I'm thinking about like even when I was like younger, I had so much energy and like was hyperactive. And so my parents put me in a ton of different sports.
Oh, that's great.
But there were certain sports that like I could not be in because there was like too much standing around. And then I would be like running around doing like causing mischief. And my parents are like, we need to like put her in something more active. And I remember there would be times like at home that I would be like pinballing too much. And my parents would put me outside to run around a tree.
Yep. Like, so I have a similar story. So growing up, my brother was very hyperactive. And at the time, my parents had no idea about ADHD or diagnosing or whatever. And they were just like, all right, that's him. And I remember my dad would always say, you need to take a battery out right now. You need to take a battery out, because he was so hyperactive. And he ended up getting diagnosed a little bit later in life. He was very happy about that, just to kind of have that diagnosis and get on medicine to help him focus.
What medicine did he get on?
I think he got on a stimulant like Vyvanse. Like, I wish I would have had this throughout school, because I would have been able to pay attention and focus and actually like do my work. And so school was very difficult for him growing up. The kind of reason why I got into school psychology is because I saw that from early on that different kids learn differently.
Yeah.
And so my brother is 2 years older than me, and when I started getting into school, learning came very easy to me. And I just thought that's how all kids are. And then I saw my brother, and he struggled so much with like reading and learning how to read and sitting still.
Yeah.
So that kind of opened my eyes early on to see that, okay, not every kid learns the same way.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting because everyone's brain is set up so differently. And I always tell people, especially like when it comes to school, because being able to sit and focus and learn and read and recall is like, that is a skill. And like, if it's not your bag, that's fine. Do what you need to do. But also, if it is your bag and you're good at it, keep doing it.
Exactly.
And you get a lot of good experience. And I tell people that I have my PhD, and I'm sure that you get this with your master's, is people be like, oh yeah, like school was never really my thing. And it's like, yeah, I get that. But like, if it is your thing, like, go do it. Go do it.
So at the school that I work at, I work with kindergarten to 8th grade students. And so you really start to worry about with kids' self-esteem, right? Like, so, really like 3rd grade and on, they really start to notice I might be different from my peers. I might learn differently. And what I tell all the kids and the parents is that every single person has different strengths and different weaknesses. And we're doing this testing to figure out what your strengths are and what your weaknesses are, and how can your teachers and the adults around you support you and figure out how to teach you best and kind of capitalize on those strengths, but then target the weakness. Everybody learns differently, and I think it's just kind of figuring out our different strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah. Okay. So another thought that I had to write it down because I had it and then it drifted off and then I came back and I don't want to forget it. And this is just like a hypothesis that I have, but because ADHD, I feel like it's really prevalent. Now, do you think that that is a product of our society? Because there's so much input coming to us as far as like on the TV, on our phones, like short form content. There's like so much stimulation coming at us, like
all the time.
Like, when are you ever doing one thing? Like, even me, I'll be like doing work on my computer, I'm listening to a show, and then if my phone goes off, like I'm doing something on my phone.
Right.
And so do you think that this rise in ADHD is just a product of the constant stimulation that we have from society?
I definitely think it's a factor, for sure. It's so hard to sustain your focus now with everything that's coming at us from all angles. And even I think about parents who they go to work and then they have to clock in for second shift and pick up their kids and, be mom at the end of the day. And it's hard, one, to have the energy to do everything we have to do, and doctor's appointments and all of that, to just juggle life itself.
Yeah.
But then again, we're being stimulated by music, media, the short form content, scrolling. I think that all plays a factor in it too.
I don't know if I was going to say back in the day, but even like thinking about like an Amish community where like they don't have all of that stimulation, everything is so contained. How do you think their ADHD rates are?
Right.
Like...
Exactly. No, I've actually thought about that too. And I've always think about, like, evolutionarily speaking, when we were hunters and gatherers, our brains were not meant to hold this much information all the time. And I think about the news and even like the bad news that we're exposed to. Back like the 1920s, 30s, we didn't know what was happening in this part of the world. We didn't know what was happening all the way across the globe.
Yeah.
But now it's at our fingertips, and then you almost get emotionally exhausted from that too.
And because like all of that input is so salient, like it's not just like a passing like, oh, whatever. It's like these really big stories, these really heavy things in your heart, in your head.
Yes.
And so it's like, how can you not be affected by that and then just like hang on to it?
Exactly. Yeah. And even for me, like, I have to kind of go on these social media breaks where I might get down a rabbit hole into researching something, and then it's kind of almost too heavy, and I need to just take a break and give me some lighthearted stuff and just kind of detox from it for a little bit. And I've really kind of tried to stop watching the news. I don't really have any news apps. I try to be informed about what's going on, like the big things, but at the same time, I know that if I keep seeing all of these things, these terrible things, that it's going to deplete my mental and emotional energy. So I have to be very intentional about what I am looking at on social media or scrolling by. Because it's a lot.
There was something that I saw and it's like, oh, I'm not depressed. I just spent too much time on the internet. And it's like, yeah.
Yes, that's like a thing. Yeah. For sure. And I think too, like humans are very empathetic just in our nature. And when we hear about these like terrible things happening, it's just like we feel for these people, we feel for what people are going through. But then it's hard to kind of show up at the end of the day for the people in our lives sometimes, or at least that's my experience. So I kind of have to, even in what I do in my job, it is very emotionally and mentally taxing sometimes. So I do have to remember to have self-care at the end of the day, or like if I'm coming home from work and I had a hard day, going for a walk or doing those self-care things that I know help me feel better mentally and recharge my battery so that I can go on the next day.
Yeah, and I think that in the line of work that you do, like where you're so interconnected with people that are relying on you for these diagnoses, for these support, like that's so important to make sure that your cup is full so that you can help other people like fully and mindfully, and just being able to do that.
Yeah. And I think it just like the self-care aspect. I know it's kind of this like, trope in social media, oh, self-care. But even if people find one or two things that they can do as a daily habit that doesn't even have to be long, whether it's, doing 5 minutes of meditation like you like to do, or a little bit of exercise if they can squeeze it in, on their lunch break or something. Just something that just helps to get you regulated again. I think a lot of people don't realize how much stress they hold in their bodies and how much the mental load can affect like the mind body connection. Even for me, sometimes I don't realize I'm stressed until like my shoulders are kind of like propped up like this and I'm like, oh wait, okay, I've been standing like that all day. I need to take a moment, take a breath and relax. I have this one thing that I do. So I call it my first mindful breath of the day. Sometimes I'll be driving home and I breathe in and I'm like, this is my first mindful breath of the day that I've taken all day, that I've noticed, like that I've purposely put energy on and thought, okay, I'm just breathing, having a big deep breath in and a big deep breath out.
Is that something that you picked up from Bob? Because I remember him doing that during yoga, and I remember after he said it once, like you said something about it on the beach.
That's probably where I got it from.
Because it was 7:00, and I remember after you're like, yeah, he said to do that, and I realized that was my first intentional breath this entire day.
Okay, that's where I got it from.
Okay.
Yeah,
Dude,
I shout out Bob. I still try to use that, and like there's some days where it's 4:00 and I haven't even paid attention to like taking a deep breath. But wow. Yeah.
I feel like being able to, and I like try to do my mindful practices first thing in the morning because I feel like that just like sets up my day. But sometimes it's hard because the day gets going. And okay, so going back to social media, I do want you to go on a rant like you were, because there's so much, I guess, like pop sci on social media right now around ADHD, around autism. And so, what's that one that you were talking about?
So
ADHD?
There's a new thing in pop psychology that you'll see on social media, and they call it ADHD, meaning you have autism and ADHD. Now,
is that in the DSM-5?
It is not an official diagnosis in the DSM-5. They are two separate diagnoses. And so autism and ADHD, they're two separate diagnoses. You can have both. They can be
comorbid.
Yes.
Do they like usually coexist? Like how often are they seen together?
I don't know the statistics on that one, so I'll have to look.
But like in your experience, if someone has ADHD, is it pretty likely that they'll have autism or the other way around?
In my experience, no. I get some cases where a child will come in maybe 3 years old for an autism evaluation, but then we'll also evaluate for ADHD, a lot of times we kind of err on the side of caution with diagnosing ADHD that young.
Yeah.
Parents can notice some symptoms early on, but really when the child gets to pre-K and school age is where we'll notice, okay, they really struggle sitting still. They really struggle with paying attention, or they're really hyperactive or impulsive. So really those symptoms kind of first we'll see more at that pre-K or school age. So I kind of err on the side of caution with diagnosing ADHD that young. I mean, a child can display symptoms that early, for sure.
Okay, so back to ADHD. Just like, what do you think about like all of the buzz in media these days around psychology?
I think there's a huge disconnect between social media and actual like psychology and what is actually true and what's not. I think on one hand it's good that people are being exposed to kind of knowing the symptoms of certain disorders and things like that. And on the other hand, I think that there's a lot of misinformation out there. For example, we talked about before how, someone might be like, well, I have this weird interest. I really like shark tooth hunting and I'm a little bit socially awkward, so maybe I have autism. That's not really the case with a lot of people, but some people might jump to like, okay, I have autism. If you truly believe you do, you can go and get an evaluation and know for sure. I think there's just a lot of hype about being like neurodivergent when maybe you could just be into like a quirky interest and that's okay.
Yeah, that's funny. This was like years and years ago, but I read a statistic that like 1 in 4 people are autistic. And so I feel like I just like walk around the world with that thinking that like most everyone is autistic, and so I just give everyone a little bit of grace. And
and I think that rate is probably higher now. It might be higher than 1 in 4 now.
Probably. But I definitely get what you're saying because like we're all human. We're all weird. We all have little like awkward moments. Yeah. And it's like, do you have autism or did you just have an autistic moment?
Yes. I think it can be a little bit dangerous when we over-identify with our disorder or our disability. So again, with autism, I see on social media that a lot of people will identify with, yes, I have autism or I'm autistic. In the autistic community, well, there's different phrases of how you should say. Like some people say, yes, it's fine to say I'm autistic, or some people use person first language and say I'm a person with autism.
Yeah.
So there's that piece. There is a sense of identity that people find through the community of like having autism, yes, but I think it can be flipped on the other side of the coin where we over identify with our disability to where maybe we can't make as much progress in interventions because autism is our identity or ADHD is our identity. Specifically in counseling, if you're a person who's ruminating a lot on something and you just say, oh, well, I have autism, I ruminate on things. How can you really create change in counseling if you're thinking, well, this is just me and this is just my personality or this is just who I am? So how can the counselor really help to move you forward in therapy?
Yeah.
That's what I always go back to.
Yeah, I think having a diagnosis is really good to be able to identify, get the resources that you need. But if that is just kind of like, if that's a stopping point where it's like, this is just how it is, because like we were saying earlier, the brain is so plastic and like your brain is a muscle and like you can strengthen it, you can work on things. And I guess thinking like with me with ADHD is that diagnosis, that medication that I was taking, it was like one thing, but it's like I know that this is just covering up the symptoms, and like if I want to be able to live my life to the fullest, I really need to like do this work.
Yes.
And like I know that every single case is different and everyone has their own capacity of what they could do, and like that worked for me, other things work for other people.
So when I was in grad school, we were taught that the most effective interventions for ADHD are medication, stimulant medication, and then behavioral therapy. And it's kind of like learning strategies that you can use.
Yeah.
So really those two are the most effective interventions for ADHD. I think it's really important that we do both because a lot of times we just heavily rely on, okay, we're just going to take medicine. But like you were saying, it's really good to learn those strategies to just be able to function maybe without medicine in the future. Or if you want to do medicine, that's great, but do it while learning executive functioning strategies or something like that.
Yeah. And with ADHD, because you said that it's a neurodevelopmental disorder. But I feel, and maybe this is just the circles that I'm running in, most of the people that I know that have ADHD are super high performers. It's like they take their hyperactivity, even like the attention deficit, and they got their hands in so many different pots, and they're like, yeah, like I'm doing this and I'm doing it well.
Yeah, and that can be kind of a thing too, what I notice with ADHD. And now this isn't in the DSM-5, but I notice this with a lot of kids and adults, is that if they are interested in something, they are able to hyper focus on it and almost fixate on it. But then on the flip side of the coin, if they're not interested at all, it's like game over.
Yeah. I definitely saw that, especially in my PhD program, where like you're hyperfixating on one thing for 5 years.
Which is crazy, 5 years.
Yeah. But like if you're really into it, and like you either should be, or like you get to that point, because I definitely, there were projects that I was doing where it's like I wasn't initially interested, but then because I was working on it so much, it's like, this is my shit.
Yes.
Yeah. So just very, very interesting
and
with that.
And like you're passionate about what you're doing and your field of research. Like when I was in grad school, obviously I still am passionate about my field, you know, so you want to like be productive and do a good job.
Yeah. So I guess, and this, thinking about like what you just said, like if they're interested in it, like they're really into it, but if they're not, they're just like not going to do it. I've talked with people where they're talking about like school assignments or even like things that they do at work, and they're like, oh, well, like I can't do that because I'm not interested in it and I have ADHD.
And I was going to say the biggest part, so a lot of times people with ADHD, if they have like inattentive type, so there's 3 types of ADHD. There's ADHD inattentive type, there's ADHD hyperactive impulsive type, and then there's ADHD combined type. Back in the day, we would call it ADD, attention deficit disorder.
Yeah.
They replaced that, and now it's called ADHD inattentive type. So a lot of people that struggle in that aspect of focus, attention, they'll struggle with task initiation, so starting a task, and then task completion, completing a task. So for a lot of kids, what strategies we use is we'll either chunk the material. So we'll say, okay, you're going to do 3 math problems instead of 8. And if they can show mastery on that, then that might be good. Or we're just going to start this task and we're going to put our timer on and we're going to do it for 5 minutes. We're going to get as much done as we can in 5. We're going to take a break after. And even just starting the task, because a lot of kids and adults, we get overwhelmed. Even if a task doesn't seem that big, we might get overwhelmed with the thought of doing it. And then your brain, once you start the task, your brain is like, okay, well, I did this in this amount of time. It's only going to take me this amount of time to finish it. So it kind of just gets you over that little hump.
And I definitely feel that looking at a task like from the outside is so, like for me, it can be very daunting.
Very daunting.
But I know that like once I like get into it, like my favorite, I love like a plan. And I used to do this in school whenever there was like a big project. I would sit down and I would create a plan, like an outline for it, a timeline for it, so that it's like I understand like how big the project is, how long it's going to take me. And then I felt very productive doing it, but it wasn't like hard work. I wasn't actually doing the project.
But you were doing it like in like small chunks type of thing.
And like breaking it up into chunks, so I knew how big
and
it was.
And that's a great strategy. I mean, that's
like
a great strategy.
It's
a great strategy for ADHD, but really for any type of big task.
Yeah.
Just to chunk it down, and we call it like task analysis. Like you're chunking the task down into smaller.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's an awesome strategy.
Yeah. Okay. So I guess like we've been sitting here for a while, so we got people coming over. We're having a party today.
Happy July 4th.
Do you have any advice for, I'm thinking specifically women 20, 30s, because this is the primary demographic of who watches this.
Okay.
But people that are like, they have ADHD, they think that they might have ADHD or autism, as far as just like what they can do to like live their life to the fullest, any type of beneficial like tips or tricks that you have.
Yeah, I think especially with females in adulthood who are questioning if they might have ADHD, go get an evaluation. A lot of times it can be covered under your insurance. I think that sometimes we might think that we have it, but we actually don't. Sometimes that kind of just having closure on something can help. Or if you do have it, kind of confirming that you do have it. I would say that medication is a good option if you're interested in that. That would typically be done through a psychiatrist. Medication, and then also looking up like executive functioning strategies or little things that you can do to help with your day-to-day life. For example, an executive functioning strategy might be like making lists, chunking.
Do you have any executive function practices that you implement?
I do. So if I have to work on reports or do work, I have a little timer that I set. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus for this amount of time and then I'm going to take a little break. Or I do make lists a lot and then cross out what I have gotten done. I will try to chunk things that are like really big and kind of just are overwhelming. I'll try to chunk it down into small tasks. I think kind of those strategies are really helpful just in daily life too. And it can be like anything. It could be housework. You can be like, all right, today, instead of cleaning the whole bathroom, I'm just going to clean the sink. And then, and then maybe you get into it and then you're like, okay, maybe I'll clean the toilet too, or, whatever.
Well, thanks so much for sitting down. This is so much fun.
Thank you for having me on your pod.
I love you so much. This is awesome. Oh my God, we didn't even use the DSM-5. We had it right here.
We don't need it.
Dude, I know, because all of it lives in your brain.
All right, my beautiful brainy babes, that is all I have for you today. I have all of the important information that we talked about linked down in the show notes. I also have a link to some hormone-free birth control. Natural Cycles is down there. Thank you all so much for listening. Stay smart, stay safe, and stay sexy. I love you, and I will see you so soon. Bye. Mwah.